Ahoy there, Lorcana fans. Welcome back to another Camp Quest video. I'm Ian. Whispers in the Well is less than a week away. I'm so excited to start getting in and playing with all these new cards, collecting them, ripping packs, playing some sealed. It's going to be awesome. But today I wanted to share some of the decks that I've been brewing up to take the existing meta decks that we know and love from Fabled and reimagining them in this new format, seeing what works, what changes, and what new cards we have access to. So without further ado, let's start with Amber Steel. All right, so Amber Steel Aggro was one of the top decks that we saw throughout the entirety of the Fabled format, and that was in large part due to the powerhouse that was the Aurora Tiana combo. Now, I am on the record as saying I'm worried about Tiana in this next format. There are so many new things that can disrupt Tiana before you ever really get value out of it. Previously, it was challenging for a lot of decks to find ways to get rid of Tiana right away, to deal with it on the same turn that it exerts itself and becomes active. And that's how Amber Steel decks were able to power through that early to mid game, keeping their fast questers alive long enough to get to 20. I think that changes a lot in the future, and I think that that causes Amber Steel to have to shift in a different direction. Now, here is an aggro build that I have thrown together that is going to look similar to what you would have played if you were an Amber Steel aggro player before. Now, of course, we're not 100% sure what direction this goes, but this He Hurled His Thunderbolt is obviously a new hardcore Steel staple. It's a card that is going to be able to deal 4 damage off of a Singer 4. We have a Singer 4 relatively early, not just with Troubadour, but also with our Shift Rhino, so that's really great. The downside, of course, is we don't have that powerhouse Tiana to be able to keep things, alive once she's exerted and slow your opponent's challengers down. And I'm a little bit concerned about how that's going to go, especially considering, from the version of the list that we had pre-rotation, where we had a little bit more gas in the tank with Rapunzel. It was okay if our opponent was dealing with our stuff, throughout the course of the game. But now, we really need to find a way to protect our stuff and get ahead. We still have the strength of our lady pulling out, Nalas, and, we can follow up, obviously, with Plutos. We have Rhinos. All of that is well and good. I think the only thing this deck does get a new bit of an edge in is adding in this 2-drop Mowgli. We have Mowgli and Pete now to deal with big songs like Under the Sea, new actions like Spooky Sight, other Steel decks that want to be singing removal. We can either rip them out of the hand with Mowgli, or we can freeze them for a turn, unable to do anything with Pete. That is quite good. So against those control decks, you probably do have a little bit more of an edge. Against the mid-range decks or the other, aggressive decks, especially Steel ones that might be playing things like Calhoun, I do worry about how this is going to fare into the next meta. So I decided to go ahead and whip up a 1B to this Amber Steel 1A, and that's going to be Steel Song. All right, so Steel Song has been in the meta for the entirety of Lorcana up until Fabled. Unfortunately, just too many cards, the song parts of it for the most part, rotated out with the introduction of Set 9, and so Amber Steel was relegated towards its aggro tendencies instead of being the more mid-rangey, deals damage to stuff early with your removal songs and then refill hand with A Whole New World. Now, A Whole New World's gone. 3-drop, aerial that could dig for songs is gone. We do not have Zeus. We do not have Storm Rage on, but we're a little bit closer now with He Hurled His Thunderbolt, which does give us just enough removal to actually make some waves between 4 Strength, 4 Thunderbolt, and 3 World's Greatest Criminal Minds, which actually is a little bit stronger now than maybe it ever has been, because we have seen a little bit of power creep in stats over the last couple sets, and Ravensburger is making a lot of big characters centerpieces of decks, things like Clarabelle. World's Greatest Criminal Mind is a little bit more frequently useful, which is fantastic because this deck really does want to be able to get its singers out, remove things, and snowball the advantage into the mid to late game with some of its big beefy bodies. Now, again, we are living in a depowered format. I think that, set 8, this would never have flown, but we have Beyond the Horizon as a pale facsimile of our long forgotten Whole New World, may it rest in peace. And instead, we are sort of taking the pieces of Steel Song that we know to be effective, those early game singers, right, like Troubadour and Ursula, as well as our early shift targets, right? We previously wanted to be shifting in 5-drop so we could sing Whole New World. We don't actually need that anymore. We can focus on getting 4 singers instead. And so Rhino is still very effective. Shifting in, singing Thunderbolt is going to be, pretty darn good in a lot of matchups. But we don't have to just do that. We can play the 1-drop Aurora, which not only can discount other 1-drop princesses like itself and Mulan, but more often we're looking to be sitting on for a turn or two so that we can be getting an Ariel into play a turn early, or even a Namari or Big Ariel into play a turn early. I'm testing out this Shanti, which is a new card here in set 10, which is a Singer 5. It's got 5 defense. Now, unfortunately, it's not a princess. You could totally be playing the legendary Aurora from a couple sets ago, which is also a Singer 5 and is a princess, so it can be discounted with the 1-drop Aurora. The only reason I'm sticking with Shanti is because I'm looking at the format saying I think there's going to be a lot of Thunderbolts being hurled around, and Shanti will survive that, whereas the Aurora will not. So that's why we've included that here. One card that in my testing has actually been really, really effective is this 5-drop Uninkable Gazelle, which is a Singer 7, 3/8, so pretty resilient body, and it allows you to stack your deck with a song from your discard pile when you put it into play. That can be really good in this sort of structure where if you're ahead, stack another removal piece on top. If you're behind and you need to get back into the game, stack Beyond the Horizon. And as long as this 3/8 body survives a turn, you're going to be able to get Beyond the Horizon sung and refill your hand. Now, this 4-drop Whisper Ariel, I was a little bit skeptical of. It felt a little bit slow. It is by no means anywhere near as good as the Ariel. I think it was Spectacular Singer, the 3 cost from set 1. But it's actually kind of nice. You can get it in on turn 3 with Aurora, or just normally on turn 4, and then the following turn, boost it once. It only costs 1 to get a boost under it, and once it has a boost, and there's a card underneath it, you don't have to do it turn after turn like some of the other boost cards. And then once per turn, whenever you sing a song, you get to draw a card. That extra card draw is what this deck needs. It's what it lives and breathes off of. Now, I do think it's possible in some iteration we look at potentially including docks and introducing those back into the list. But for right now, I have been not having too many issues running out of card draw, so long as I prioritize getting a Beyond the Horizon sung at a decent time in the game with all of our Singer 2s, our Singer 2-drops, but also our good quality 3s and 4s. And with that in mind, usually I'm able to kind of get through the deck. The Ariel, the 4-drop Ariel helps, as does the Namari, which has been a MVP card in this list for me thus far. Still looking to refine the list. It's my early set 10 first stab at Steel Song, but I've actually been kind of delighted at seeing that old archetype beginning to, reemerge as viable, and we will see how viable it is going to this set, because I do think that Amber Steel aggro is likely to take a big step back. So with that in mind, Steel Song, let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any ideas, anything I missed in there, like this is one of the ones that I'm kind of most interested in tinkering with as the set progresses, because I think it's not very obvious what direction we're going to go in. But let's go ahead and move on to our next deck. All right, so we have Baja Blast, or Cow Control as I like to call it, which is largely unchanged in its structure, but obviously you can see there's a big card that is not present in this iteration of the list, and that is the Under the Sea, as well as the Heads Held High. Now, it's interesting, right? I do think Heads Held High and Under the Sea are still totally viable. There's nothing wrong with them. It's a good combo. It's great against aggro, but I have a sneaking suspicion that true, like fast, all-in aggro is going to have a little bit of a hard time once the metagame settles. Early on in sets, it tends to do pretty well because people don't have refined lists, but as the metagame settles, aggro can tend to struggle, especially the deeper into formats we get. And keep in mind, we were just in a format, with only 5 sets in rotation. Now there's a 6th, and there's a lot of great new controlling options available in multiple colors. So the swap to Prince Philip and Spooky Sight, as opposed to playing the Under the Sea package, is to try to still be able to handle aggressive decks through Spooky Sight, while also hedging our bets into the grindier matchups where the ability to do a board wipe, even against the bulky characters that we're likely to see, can be pretty good, especially when you're leaving a 6/6 evasive 3-quester on the board after you wipe it, right? Because Under the Sea was something that you'd go all in, to cast, and usually you can snowball your way throughout the rest of the game, but sometimes you're in a position where you have a lone John Silver who has to sing Heads Held High, you hard cast Under the Sea, and yes, you deal with your opponent's board, but afterwards you don't have a lot of threats out there, and if your opponent is playing a deck that either has a good amount of card draw left or had been stacking cards in their hand, they can sometimes get back into the game that way. So instead, we do have the Spooky Sights to try to handle, the swarming the board strategies like dogs, sometimes like, faster Purple Steel or Amber Steel. But for the most part, we're actually leaning heavily into this Prince Philip and Malicious, Mean and Scary, thank you, combo, which can just obviously set up this beautiful 1-2 punch board wipe as you sing Malicious, Mean and Scary with something and then play Prince Philip. This is not currently running the shift target Prince Philip. I think that it's good and could be played probably instead of this Kita that I have here. But I was playing this last night and I had very few issues getting up to 9 ink to be able to get this Prince Philip in play against pretty much everything but the fastest decks that I saw. Which I would usually just try to handle by finding a Spooky Sight and getting that out there, right? So, how was that able to be? How was I able to do that? It's the Cinderella. Gang, the Cinderella is crazy. Being able to come in and effectively act like a How Far I'll Go with a body. Now, granted, you can't sing it. That was always the advantage of How Far I'll Go. You play a 4-drop and then you sing How Far I'll Go with that 4-drop. Amazing. But we can't do that here. But the only other thing you would love to have seen on How Far I'll Go when you had to often hardcast on 4 if you wanted to double ramp would be, man, I wish this came with a body. And it does. It's called Cinderella. This card is cracked. If it lives even a single turn, you are often doing some really gross stuff if you can follow it up with another princess. And in this case, I had multiple times where I was able to go Cinderella, it stuck, and then followed up with either Akita or another Cinderella to ramp yet again. Of course, Cinderella being extra nice because unlike Tipo, it doesn't actually eat a card. It replaces the card that you're going to ink, which is incredible when you can get up to those high numbers even faster to be getting your Clarabelles, Basils, Hades, or even turboing up to your Prince Philip, which I was able to do in one game, getting my Prince Philip Malicious, Mean, and Scary combo so fast because I had gone Cinderella on 4, ramp to 5, the following turn, ink to 6, play another Cinderella, and get up to 8 from both of those end of turn triggers. It was gross. I was able to then the next turn ink for turn and play hardcast my Prince Philip after singing Malicious, Mean, Scary. It was really, really cool. So I do think that there's probably some refinement that will happen. I think the biggest question mark is this 4-drop Kita slot. Does this Kita stay? Do we work in the shift targets? How many Spooky Sights are we running? Are we staying on Spooky Sight? Because you could just stick with an Under the Sea if you think that's going to be effective enough. That's the big question here with Baja Blast, but it is definitely still a viable deck, and The old version is still just as good. I don't really see any more issues with the old version other than maybe the introduction of Mowgli. But this build, of course, with the new Prince Philip, can do some really, really cool stuff. I would be very surprised if this did not have some role in the metagame for tournaments in set 10. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Blurple. All right, so no surprise to anyone, but Blurple is still very, very good, very, very viable, and it even got more tools. We're at a point where Amethyst has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to card draw. So many different ways to draw cards that are both, cost effective, efficient when it comes to, finding times in the game to play them. So many of them come with bodies at this point. We're talking about, we used to say how cracked Genie was because it was a draw that came with a body. Well, now we're looking at even more cards that do that. Demona is a huge new addition, one that I'm very personally excited for. Fingers crossed I pull like 17 and a half of them because I just think they're that good. The ability to use it either as card draw or as control is perfect for Blurple. It's exactly what Blurple wants to see. If, for whatever reason, you get to your turn 6 and you're just desperate for card draw, it can come in and get your hand refilled after you did all that ramping, right? But, of course, if you're in that late game scenario, your opponent is at 18 and they drop a character and you need to remove it and you don't have a Hades locked and loaded, Demona is one more way you can get that character exerted, challenge into it. And so being able to serve that dual role of card draw when you're desperate for cards or control when you're desperate for control, and being able to exert an entire board state is truly crazy, especially on an inkable card, and especially on a card with 5-6 stats. I mean, just wild. But that's not all. Shout out, by the way, honorable mention to the 5-drop Hades, which does not make the cut in here for me yet. I can totally see it being in there. No judgment if you want to be jamming it in your Blurple. I think it's a solid card. But instead, I'm focusing the majority of the spots on testing this Junior Woodchuck guidebook and bringing back Tamatoa. This is because I would love to see Blurple sort of returning to its set 8 environment. Well, granted, we're never going to have Popsicle Bell back in here unless Ravensburger does something crazy and reprints Popsicle. But the Junior Woodchuck Guidebook is about as close as we're going to get. It's a very efficient, inkable item that can destroy itself to draw cards, which, of course, lets you loop it with Tamatoa as you get into the late stages of the game. This has been very effective in testing, and I honestly just think it is going to be a extremely efficient way to play Blurple in a build like this one where you are going from, the optimal build having like 11 to 13 uninkables to being back down to highly consistent, largely brick-free with only 8 uninkables. You do not have to play Second Star and Finders Keepers unless you want to play them. Having that many different ways to draw, this one being by playing very proactive cards like the Tamatoas and putting a 4/5 Quest for 2 body in the opponent's face and knowing, hey, they just put this threat out and they just refilled their hand with card draw, is something that is going to stretch your opponent's resources in a way that Finders Keepers, taking, a turn off to cast Finders Keepers, or even having to not threaten to quest or challenge for a turn just so you can sing Second Star, cannot do. They all have their merits. They all have their advantages. I can totally see any of these versions doing well depending on what else is in the metagame, but right now, for pure efficiency and consistency, this Tamatoa Junior Woodchuck Guidebook build just feels really smooth. So definitely give it a try if you're a Blurple fan like me and Lindsay. Give it a spin and let me know in the comments below what you think is going to be the card draw engine of this set 10 Blurple build. All right. Let's go ahead and move on over to one of my personal favorites, dogs. All right, if you followed the channel throughout this Fabled set, you'd know I played a lot of dogs. It was my primary tournament deck. I had a ton of success at set champs with it. I won a set champs, and I top forward every set champs that I went to. It was a very effective deck, and I got to be honest, I think it just gets better this set. Now, I do prefer the Sea Dogs build, playing into the Under the Seas. I do think that a lot of what I'm going to say here in this video also does apply to the Chromacon, the Chroma Dog fans out there as well. It just kind of depends on what sort of win condition is your cup of tea. For me, I like the outlet of being able to deal with other aggro decks through Under the Sea. We will see how many aggro decks are viable. If aggro takes sort of a step back or starts playing beefier bodies more commonly, 3-4 power units, and they're fading some of the like the Nalas, right, the Tianas, stuff like that. If that truly does fade, like I think it will, maybe Under the Sea needs to take a step back, or we need to find room for other win conditions. But Dogs is the ultimate sort of combo shell that can support different win conditions in the same thing, because we're getting all of these bodies out and we're using Tramp to filter through our deck for exactly what we need for whatever the matchup is. Now, the new cards, and I think that there's several, some even that I didn't include in here, but the ones that I'm most excited for is this new Ilanwi, which is in my current testing taking the place of the Merryweathers that was very prevalent in this list. There are pros and cons. Obviously, the Merryweather can come in and boost something on that same turn, but Ilanwi can come in and being that 2-1 support that we've seen been very successful with things like the 1-drop Basils, right? It can come in, sit there on the board, or you can pull it back alongside one of the 1-drop ladies, the 0-3s. You can pull it back. Let's say you shifted a lady. You want to pull those two back, plop them down together, and you know that that's adding up to 4 questing the following turn, assuming they're not disrupted. So I like its ability, even though it's telegraphing your moves. It seems to be more consistently getting ladies buffed up in key moments to get those extra questing points. So I'm having a lot of fun with Ilanwi. I also have Finnegan here, which is really cool, especially when there's big problem cards hitting the board that have that 2 or less power. I think that right now it is really effective when people are still trying to make Tiana's work. But it also being able to say your Blurple opponent slams a genie, you can immediately just play this, slow the game down 1 turn, and pop it right back to their hand. That can be very, very effective. But I think the biggest upgrade we have here is the Mowgli, which right now I have traded out. In my mind, it's an upgrade over Ursula, which is a fantastic card, but it only removes songs. Mowgli has 1 less defense, but it can remove any non-character. That's items, so you can hit it on a Blurple and remove one of their Woodchuck guidebooks, right? It also is going to hit actions that are not songs, like Spooky Sight, which I think is going to become a little bit of a threat here for the Sea Dogs. So the Mowgli is just a strict upgrade. Now, it remains to be seen. Maybe we start running Mowgli and Ursula, which is a unique thing that only Amber Emerald can do. But I do think that Mowgli right now, just as a stand-in, is going to be just more effective. The 1 defense, while you did like having that extra defense for buffing things up and trading into things, I think it is well worth the extra flexibility and removing problem cards. Fire the Cannons is a huge one that you can hit early against things like Purple Steel, and that can really wreck your day if you're a Purple Steel opponent hits those early Fire the Cannons, because then you're not able to assemble enough characters on board to get those cheap tramps that you want to be seeing. And then the last card that I'm testing out right now, I have it at 3, even though I would probably normally only play 2 copies. I'm just trying to see it more often and see if I like it. Is this Della's Moon Lullaby, I think, is what it's called. I have a window in front of it where it is on my deck list right now, which is why I don't 100% know that I'm right. But that is a great little 2-cost song. It's sort of holding the place of Heffalumps and Woozles right now. Heffalumps is nice, and it's singable. And so it is of the cards that can pop illusions. Heffalumps is what I played because it replaces itself. It can be sung, which doesn't mess with your ability to play characters out on the same turn that you want to pop a Cobra or an Iago. But Della's Moon Lullaby can do that exact same thing, but it can also reduce a character's attack to set up an Under the Sea. Now, it's not too often that you have them in the hand at the same time, but just the ability to potentially sit on an Under the Sea for a turn or 2, reduce something that is a 3 or 4 power unit, and then Under the Sea will sometimes just win you games outright that you might not have won otherwise. Like peeling away a Calhoun on a keyboard is and will be very effective. The other thing that I've actually found is nice about it, that while that pairing with Under the Sea may be a little bit of a, low occurrency combination, what I have found is being able to utilize it in key situations where your opponent has like a Calhoun out or something else that is like their only very strong character, and they're going to use it. You can actually reduce that attack so that they have a much harder time trading into your stuff, and your questers are going to live an extra turn. So I think that is a pretty worthy card to be testing out here, and one that I can totally see incorporated in this illusion popping slot if that proves necessary as the meta progresses. So very excited for Sea Dogs. Played it some last night, and it was really, really just as explosive as ever, but has some of these new tricks and tools that opponents are not expecting. Okay, last but certainly not least, we have Purple Steel. It's interesting. Purple Steel is one of the decks that I never really found personally very enjoyable. It's certainly got the purple stuff that I like and the steel stuff that I like, but smash them together, and it just isn't really my cup of tea. But it's undeniable that it got some great new options that are going to open up new lines of play in this next set, and I'm pretty excited for a few of them. I do want to just shout out a couple of the cards in here that we've already talked about. Demona, I'm not going to spend too much time highlighting. This Hades, this feels like the kind of deck that Hades actually wants to live in, right? You're able to, play another 5-drop in matchups where you're the aggressor. It is effectively going to say draw 2 cards because your opponent is going to be behind the 8 ball and they're going to be needing their characters for to remove your stuff. And realistically speaking, I think there's going to be plenty of situations too where you're the controlling player and it's going to say draw 2 cards when it comes into play because your opponent who's getting close to 20 isn't going to let you remove their things. Now, here's the interesting thing about it. In some of those situations, in my experience testing it, it actually was like too predictably, like it was always a draw 2. Right? And a 5-cost draw 2 is sometimes good, certainly better than playing a Finder's Keepers, right? Because it comes with a 3/4 body. But you do have to be aware that, like, in 90% of the circumstances, your opponent is often going to look at you, a Purple Steel player, which has access to just so much draw, and they're usually going to say, yeah, just have the cards. I can't afford to let you kill my thing. Right? And you will have just spent your 5 ink, which is probably only thing you're going to be able to play that turn, unless you're also slamming like a Diablo or a 1-drop or something. But the nice thing with that is it actually lets you avoid having to play like a 4 uninkable dock package, and so you can use those uninkable slots on other things like the Calhouns and the Genies you were already using, but also like He Hurled His Thunderbolt, which more song removal is good. It'll always be good. We're happy to see it. There are plenty of things that you can nuke with 4 damage. You can nuke the Dumbos and the Genies and the Bells and the Blurple decks, right? You can pop Iagos with one more thing. It will be interesting to see if Fire the Cannons is in here in addition to Thunderbolt and Strength. It's kind of a lot, but we'll see, right? I think the option is there, and that's what matters, right? What is the count? I'm playing 4, maybe it's 2 or 3, and 1 or 2 like Fire the Cannons as well to kind of mix up your different like costs. I had 1 or 2 games where I did have like 2 or 3 Thunderbolts stuck in my hand, just bad luck, but it is annoying. But I will say that some of the big MVPs for me when I've been testing Purple Steel has been the Cheshire Cat and the Black Heron, which is weird. I mean, the Black Heron shouldn't surprise you. It's like, Smee with 1 less questing, but without the downside. A 3/3 is pretty good, especially for what this deck wants to do, especially when you have cards like Bell and Cheshire Cat who want you to be having like beefy characters that can absorb damage that you can then shift around. This Cheshire Cat has been so cool. I don't know what the count on it's going to be, but it's basically a bell that you get access to a turn earlier and can continue using if it continues to survive. So being able to have a 3/4 body, run it into something, take a little damage, boost 2, so spending 2 ink on your turn 4 turn to move that 2 or 3 damage. Well, you're moving 2 damage. You might have taken 3, but move 2 damage onto a enemy Calhoun, right? Or to finish off a trade against something like a 2/5 Donald Duck, right? You took the 2 damage, you put 3 on it, now you're moving the last 2 over, and then you can follow up with one of your 2 drops, right? Another Calhoun, another Heron, another Mim. So that's kind of what's been cool with Purple Steel. I'm still playing around with my 2 and 3 drop like numbers. Same with my 1s, to be honest. I'm not 100% happy with happy, but obviously having the Dumbo synergy for those evasives is pretty darn cool. Demona, I mentioned off the top. I wasn't going to get into how she worked, but I will say she is a game winner. Really awesome as your ultimate top end, and just being so powerful, and also having the inkable symbol is just so nice. So Purple Steel in a great spot. Who knows what direction it's going to go? Will the Dumbos still be being played? Do you need that card draw? Do you want those evasives? I think, again, with purple decks, we are looking at the reality that they have just so many options for card draw. There is no one-size-fits-all anymore, so we're just going to have to see what lines up best into the meta. But for right now, this version of Purple Steel is killing it. All right, that's it. The 5 meta decks that we saw in Fabled, but upgraded and incorporating some of the new cards from Whispers in the Well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave us a like down below. Consider subscribing. We're almost to 1,000. We're so close. So get in there and help us get to that 1,000 followers. It's going to be very exciting. Can't wait to announce that when that happens on the channel. And of course, share these videos with your friends if you think they're going to be helpful. Leave us a comment down below if you have any content you'd like us to do in the future. So without further ado, thank you so much, and we will see you on the grind.